All right, we're good.
We will call the Planning and Zoning Commission to order a few minutes after 7. Welcome everybody and Merry Christmas. I'll say it now before so I don't forget later. Merry Christmas everybody. So first order of business is to approve the November 13th commission minutes. Hopefully you've had a few minutes to look these over. They were in our packets, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to read them and review. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I said
Get on it.
Okay.
And a voice vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The minutes are approved. Next agenda item is the staff report. Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Construction is underway in every part of the downtown area. You can't get there from here. That's the most common complaint. We're about ready to see a light at the end of the tunnel, at least for the folks that have been blocked from coming down that bridge to get on to downtown from that direction. If you notice today, that portion of the bridge north of Main Street is now gone. It's being torn out. The plan is to pave it next Tuesday. It'll be a -2 pave, so it'll be just like the other stuff, drop down 2 inches. That top coat has a special temperature requirement that they're going to get in the winter, but when they do the finish it, the whole thing in the spring, it'll be ready to go. This will open it up so that it'll be travelable. The bricks are in on the streetscape, or going in on the streetscape. It's starting to look like, the benches are in, it's starting to look like something. So that's a good sign. The sewer project, that's $8 million worth of construction. Both of those projects are moving fine. They've almost caught back up on the Interceptor project. They were behind simply because as soon as they got the contract, the rain started. When you're digging 40 feet deep next to the river, it's kind of hard to keep that through the water. They've got all their systems in place and making progress. 180th Street Trail is almost complete. That'll be another day or two. And the bridge on Second Creek is doing well on time. They've already set the girders, and they're doing seal work to pour the deck in. So it's got a 120-plus day cycle on the closure, 134, total days of closure. But they're making head right now. They're in good shape. And the RFQ for the design of the trail from Liberty Road to Smithsport Park using the MoDOT bridge and the South Commercial sidewalks went out. It closes tomorrow. Hopefully by next Tuesday we will have a selection and recommendation to the board so they can start the design process with the hope of construction beginning on it early next construction season, if everything goes well. 183 building permits, plus 2 that have been sat on for a while waiting for additional documentation. So I anticipate we probably won't get any more, so we'll probably end up with 185 for the year. That's the most since 2004, where we had, that year we had 198. So we're busy. That's all I have. Sure.
any updates on the Smithville Market? I see where they had their sign up there about price shop soon.
Sure. Engineering and design are going on the buildings. At this point in time, it sounds as though, I don't have anything in writing, but believe there will be 3 buildings going up simultaneous with the infrastructure there. They got one last easement to get recorded. They've negotiated, it's complete. So that will allow them to do the sewer connection that they need to do. The water we've already acquired. MoDOT has authorized a secondary access further south, at the very, very south end of their project, for a Savior 24. So they'll have the light and all that work, plus a secondary access.
Would it be on down the hill?
It'll be right by Croft Church.
Oh, okay.
The south end of theirs.
Oh,
Yeah. So things are moving ahead. They about once a week, they're sending an email with an update to the mayor or to me and Cynthia. So
I'll be here Monday.
that's what it sounds like. But I'll let the mayor give you a time for him. I just know they're getting close.
We're meeting on Monday, push this out to us.
Is there an estimated completion date for the Price Chopper?
They only open in 2 times a year, grocery stores, either in March or in late October. They can't get it built by March, so I would assume by late October they'll be up, assuming they get started here shortly. Same, the other 2 places won't take that long, and they will build it sooner. One of them's a lumberyard, not a lumberyard, but anyway, it's called hardware store, sorry. I said lumberyard, because I know the name. So I said lumberyard, but it's not a lumberyard. And then there's supposed to be one restaurant. Don't know the name of it for sure yet either. I got a sneaking suspicion I know it. I don't know for sure.
you had mentioned last meeting something about possibility that where the dental office and Smithville Animal Hospital, the road commercial there, might go on through and go behind Sonic. Is that still something that they're looking at, or possibility, or?
Yeah, it's extended commercial. There's a bunch of negotiation going on between all the property owners around there. A bunch of negotiations.
Any other questions? Staff? Okay. Move on then. Next thing on the agenda is the single-phase final plat of Mitchell's Nursery and Greenhouse and Nursery. And on this, I need to recuse myself because I have a vested interest in this. There is any staff, or excuse me, any public comments that you would like to be held on this piece of the agenda. If you have filled out a card, a public comment card, please give it to Melissa and Randy.
Randy, listen.
That's all your birthday on.
I just hand over.
Give it to Randy, and we will address that. So, Rand, as vice chair, are you comfortable doing this, or do you want me to hand it to the mayor, whichever you prefer? Okay. Now, I'm going to recuse myself for this agenda item.
Okay, so at this point, then,
If you want me to go give an overview of the staff report, you know, hold the public hearing, that's fine, however you want to
go
do it.
ahead.
Okay. I provided a copy of the staff report, it was in the packet that went out. This is a single-phase subdivision, the primary, what even matters that mean?
Here, let me go see if I can adjust
Okay.
it.
I didn't know if it was my head doing that, or if it's the actual
No,
system.
it's reverberating on you. I didn't notice it so much up there.
The primary to start is that does this submittal of the final plat for Mitchell's Greenhouse and Nursery subdivision, 2 lots, match the approved conceptual plan that we went through some time ago? It does. So everything is submitted as it relates to the egress requirements. There are adequate utility easements as the conceptual plan requires. One of the things that commercial subdivisions, which are slightly different than residential, in that commercial subdivisions, the stormwater work occurs when the construction occurs, like the buildings. In residential, it doesn't. It's all, that stormwater work has to happen first because individual homeowners aren't putting stormwater detention basins in their houses or on their property. So in commercial, we're going to have a submittal, if any further development, anybody builds a building, wants to do any of the impervious surface stuff, then we're triggered by the site plan requirements, similar to other proposals that you've seen that we went through. We will have we'll require a traffic study, we'll require the stormwater study, all those things when they propose to do the site plan. So at this point, there's the determination from the conceptual plan by our engineers that there's more than adequate space to detain any stormwater. And looking at it, obviously it's 20 plus acres, so those evaluations will have to occur at that time. The rest of the staff report is fairly straightforward, related to the step-by-step questions that you have to ask yourself, the guidelines for review out of our code. I've answered the staff recommendation on those in bold behind it. Ultimately, there are several NAs, and that's because it either is triggered by the site plan or it's not required for a commercial. For example, there's no parkland dedication because it's not a residential structure. With that being said, that's the staff's recommendation or staff's report. Ultimately, it is our recommendation that this does comply with the conceptual plan and meets the plating standards in our code.
Okay. Now we move this time to public comment.
Yes, you open it up for the applicant to talk, and then anybody other than the applicant then speaks.
Okay, and who is the applicant? You can state your name for us.
Yeah, my name's Jack Mitchell. We had another public hearing where we had heard from the neighbors and maybe they have some additional comments tonight, but from our standpoint, this is essentially a lot split, and we think staff and our engineers have addressed the issues, but if there's any concerns that are raised by people here after you open it up to any opposition, then we're here to address whatever those concerns may be if we can. So just more or less noting our presence and the other leaders talk to anything.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Okay, those that have submitted a card to Randy.
Susan Wolf.
Yes. If you can state your name for us, and we limit the comment usually to about 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Susan Wolf. I live at 426 Northwest 134th Street. Back line, my property runs all along Mitchell's Nursery. I've addressed this committee before. I keep receiving letters. I come, I tell you my concerns, and no one seems to address those. It just seems to be what they would like to do with that property, and even though I pay taxes in this community, my concerns aren't even addressed. What I read and you're sending me is they can do whatever they want and you're going to approve because they've met the criteria that's involved. You're not addressing any of the issues where I'm concerned, where it lights up my property like it's daylight, you know. The fire department, we have no fire service on our road. How are they going to have fire service? I mean, all of those, from what I listened to him, says none of that makes any difference until after this. So I just want to know why you're not representing me as a citizen of Smithville who pays their taxes and their concerns are more important than mine. Thank you.
Do we have any others?
Yes. John Woods.
Hey, John Woods, I live at 13600 North US Highway 169, I have the property right on the north side of this lot split. And what I understand, wanting to do the lot split stuff, I have some concerns. My concerns, my main concern is the issue of access going in and out of there. I have the property right straight along, like I said, all along the north side. And how does the access proposed going into there affect me? I haven't seen anything. We asked Jack about that a while ago, so there really isn't anything. Well, okay, access is a big deal, and it's going to get bigger as this thing goes along. So my question is how is this going to be affecting my property and the access going back in there? The second thing I have concern about, having been on the Lake Anacostia Task Force before, this is all where, if this is going to be a lot split separate property, where's the septic? Is there enough room on 4 acres for that?
The minimum is 30.
Hmm?
The standard is 3 acres.
Standard what?
The standard for septic is 3 acres. They have 3 acres, they've got 4.
Okay. Well, it's narrowed down, so, okay. So that's my main concern on the thing is what that's affecting mine and what is the effect? And nobody seems to know the answer to that.
Paul Klaus.
I just have, I have a number of questions, but they'll wait till the next meeting, but.
Just
3 acres.
Paul, state your full
Oh,
name.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Paul Klaus, 1422 Northwest 134th Street, Smithville, 64089 816 Okay, I have 47 acres on the next road south, on 134th Street. Can
I'm just trying to identify where.
well,
Yeah,
it's already to go south, a quarter mile, and then back west, 2/3 of the mile, I got 47 acres there. Okay, I thought I had to have more than 3 acres. That if for a septic system in Clay County or Smithville, no, hell, I'll put 12 houses on that. How's that gonna work? It'd work better if I didn't have a storage shed in front of my road, but that's interesting. And that's my fault for not understanding that, but, I don't think that that's a real good use of that acreage for the city of Smithville. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
That's it. That's all I have. Yep.
Okay. Now, we open it up now for discussion?
Well, ultimately, you ought to close the public hearing for it, and then you guys get to start asking the discussion.
Okay. Then we will close the public hearing if there's no one else, and let's open it up for discussion here in the commission.
I just want to confirm, all we're doing tonight is still the lot splits, correct? Nothing about the potential storage units or anything like that. No plans have come forward to us.
Correct.
And you've outlined that in our staff report here, the additional requirements that have to be done in studies, correct?
Correct, absolutely, yep. And they are identified in the chapter 400 of the zoning code under the site plan development regulations.
Other questions?
I guess Melissa kind of answered it for me, because I had a lot of the same questions these folks had. It's like I haven't seen any real plans to know how this is going to affect the residents in that area, and the potential of having a storage business there didn't really fall in line with the comprehensive plan from what I read of it or how I interpreted it. And my specific questions were regarding access and where the parking lot was going to be and if that was going to be screened off from the residential areas, but it sounds like we don't know any of that yet. It's just...
Right, it ultimately, if and when that comes forward, we will require all of that to be submitted with a photometric plan that shows where all the light goes. We have a standard that it can't leave the boundary of the property. You're going to see light because they're lights, but they can't be directed off-site. And the standards between residential, which is to the south of this, versus a B3 zone, which this is, higher standards of protection and buffering. If it was business down there to the south, it wouldn't be as restricted. But with it being residential, it's the biggest restrictions we have.
Right, and I just want to make sure we're doing the best we can to protect their property
And
value.
until we see a plan that lays out how much rooftop we're going to have, and any impervious parking, we can't calculate the stormwater. The operation of the existing facility is what it is. And it will be now confined to what you see as Lot 2. So if they end up building a bunch of buildings or whatever, they'll have to do it. Now, if they could continue their same nursery operation, which is what they're likely going to do, then there is no site plan requirement. Their nursery stuff will move around to fit onto that 4 acres. And then traffic depends on what they put on Lot 1. Or if Lot 2 eventually is sold, and it's no longer a nursery, they want to redevelop it. Traffic studies. So we make sure folks get in and out appropriately.
So a lot of these concerns, we just kind of have to deal with as they come, one at a time. Okay.
Right, because if this was residential, we would be able to do the calculations for traffic. We would be able to do the calculate, because we know how many lots, how many units, and all of those things would trigger, and engineers can calculate that on a standard. This, we don't know. When they propose to start putting rooftops in, which means the water can't go into the ground better anymore, that's when we need to evaluate the stormwater. Each type of business has its own type of traffic level. So based upon the business that's going on, we need to have that evaluated so that we can make sure that people can get in and out safely. Behind the edge of the right-of-way, as Mr. Woods mentioned, is his access. He's got a 50-foot private drive right-of-way through there that's private. If he ever wants to develop in the future, he's going to want to be able to use that same roadway for that same purpose. So those things have to be taken into account with the traffic study. We just don't know the numbers yet.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Do you have anything else?
No, I mean, I'll just reiterate that at this point in time, there's no pending plans or anything to build anything, so we appreciate the necessity to come back in and go through the whole process to the extent that becomes a reality.
Okay. At this point then,
If they're, open it up to the commission for questions, if they have questions, or make a motion to approve or deny, or add conditions, or whatever.
any other questions or comments from the commission? Okay. Then we will make a motion.
You request for a motion on the single-phase final plat for Mitchell's Greenhouse and Nursery.
Do we hear a motion with that?
I
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Deb.
Aye.
Mayor Boley.
Aye.
Trenda. Rand.
Aye.
6-0.
This will be recommendation.
Oh, 5. Yep.
Yeah.
Shirley stepped down. Sorry.
Yeah. This recommendation
Yes.
will go to the Board of Aldermen at their meeting on Tuesday for the land division portion of it. It'll be by resolution.
Back over to you. Larry. Yeah. This is right up here.
Okay, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the, and we did indicate that that passed, correct? Street renaming discussion and recommendation.
Long staff report for you on this, similar to about 1 year ago. It was the December meeting of 17. We had acquired the first part of the MoDOT rights of way and had several street names to change. In that one, we ultimately decided on 2 of those streets to have a contest to select those names. And then several of the other streets, we had staff recommendations. It was extending, cleaning up, lining up streets. Similar to that, we have the same scenario. We're talking about F Highway from Linton Road by the water tower up north there, all the way to W Highway. And then DD Highway from Liberty Road intersection, which is where the last year's portion ended that we acquired, all the way out to Linton Way where the dam road starts. So we have those 2 sections. Staff's recommendation is to not do anything with the DD other than allow Main Street to continue because it's an extension of Main Street. Avoids confusion, very few people have to be notified associated with it. And then the same thing up north on the F Highway portion, there's a small section of F that is in line exactly with 180th Street. With that being said, that one gets real easy because all the properties that actually adjoin that address off of it, they address, their mailing address, property address is 180th Street. They don't, it's not listed on that highway. The only people that are addressed off of that highway are on the north portions that go due north, or head north. So those are the 2 that staff would recommend that you all discuss, come up with things, or come up with a contest, or however you all want to do it. The only caveat to all this is I will notify you ahead of time that the red portion on the second page, that portion of that highway, is in direct line with North Virginia, way down south. So if that was something you wanted to consider, you certainly could. The other one doesn't line up with the street until I got a mile into Kansas City, nothing like that.
So kind of, it lines up with Kendra's property that we can lie to, right?
Yeah, there's that gravel road that runs down there. Yeah,
So that's
so,
all lines up, it lines up with our.
right. But if you look at this on a GIS map or whatever, and go due south from the blue line, you get into a mile into Kansas City and it never has a real line north. North, no. So, to the extent that they are rather large thoroughfares comparatively, they are some of our biggest traffic generating roads. We have more traffic on that road than most. Now that it's a city street, it will be probably the busiest city street. But ultimately, you've seen the staff report, if you have any questions about that, but I would suggest that you all come up with a discussion and a plan to how you want to get these renamed. You certainly can say
we ought to name them this, make a recommendation, and go forward to the Board of Aldermen, however you want to do that. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure, all of this right now is F that goes to W.
Yes.
Yes. It's
And
currently.
yellow is the 180th.
Yeah.
That goes in front of Grayhawk, or is this Harborview?
That's our.
Harborview is to the, southeast of that. You know how, where F Highway makes the corner and it makes the corner?
80th and 180th
Yeah.
goes straight on.
Yep.
And the blue runs right in front of the Lawrence place,
Okay.
in between Gray House and Holt.
Okay. So it's the other part of that.
Yeah.
And we need to rename just the yellow?
No, the yellow staying underneath.
It's staying underneath.
Yep.
We need to rename the blue and the red?
Yes. Or put it out of conference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come up with a
You
plan
said-
on how to rename.
And currently, most of the homes that are on that road are already addressed as 180th,
On the yellow portion, every home on there
Okay.
is addressed.
but the
There-
rest of the,
Yeah, the north-south
mhm.
blue line, I believe there's one address on there.
Blue is just Bill.
Yeah, it's one address, Phil Wright.
You fill it in the contest.
Yeah. So yeah. And then the other one, I think I put it in here, I thought, I don't remember the exact number, but it was, maybe I put it in a different one. There's about 15 addresses on F Highway north of 180.
That's the red portion.
Yep, yep.
So I'm okay, I'm going to put the blue one out for contest, if everyone else is. We were kind of discussing section 1, the red area, a little bit on this side of the bench. Eagle Heights is there, Maple's got Maple streets all around it, so we're thinking something with Eagle in it. Since Eagle Heights is going to be there, new subdivision might be made.
Eagle Ridge, I think they're called.
Being creative with street homes that would be fun, be the person that.
Well, we've got Maple Lane, Maple Avenue.
Yeah. Or we could make it 197, we got 9 of those too.
Yeah.
I'm remembering back when we
They're all
did name
like-
changes on other roads, and I remember a big part of the complaint was, oh, I have to change my address.
Yeah, that's changing no matter what.
Yeah,
Because it's a city street.
yeah, it's a city
It
street.
was,
Yeah.
The difficulty with that original stuff was, for example, we call it F Highway. It's officially called Route F. Our post office convinced folks to call it County Road F. So we have people that have County Road
Mass
F.
confusion.
Yeah, so everybody's got their own name for it. At the end of the day, we ought to look at it from a perspective of what makes sense from a 911 addressing scenario. We want to make sure that folks are in the 911 system for addressing. Sometimes that's the bigger problem. But in this one, we're talking 13 or 14 people, large lots. So it's
Is this
not.
school's address 188th Street?
No, I think they're 18801 F Highway.
There needs to change.
Yeah, they'll change.
It just makes sense to call it Eagle something, Eagle Parkway, Eagle Ridge, Eagle what. There's going to be a lot of Eagle stuff going on here anyway.
Right.
We've got a wide road, and I like Jack said, it's going to be a busy city street, so
Yeah.
we're going to have to probably widen it at some point. So.
Yes.
So
Don't park
if we do
there,
a
don't park.
contest, should we do like a poll style, like give a couple of options? That way you don't get like a million different.
I know Old Rock Road's going to show up on there for sure.
A what?
Old Rock Road will
Yeah.
show up.
Last time we opened it up, I think we ended up with just like 6 or 7.
Well, we had a bunch, but we only had some that were multiple submittals. We did that one slightly different. The effectiveness of what I've seen on the social media pages of 3 options vote may be the best way to go. That way we can, so that we don't have 600. And then we're doing, if you recall, when we did it last time, we had to do a formula to calculate, what the votes were and how you guys wanted to do it. The other aspect of it, is, I would recommend that you also consider that, you may have heard of the Jefferson Highway or seen a couple of signs down here. This is the blue, yellow, and red are all part of the old Jefferson Highway system. It goes all the way up through Trimble and gets on 169, and then it went up through Agency and on into St. Joseph.
And we have the signs to put up.
Yeah. It's the old pines to palms, so that may be something that you may want to consider as well, from that old Smithville heritage standpoint, that one of them be that, whether it's the blue or the red.
Would we be able to call it Jefferson Highway or that name it Jefferson Road?
No, I think you name it what I would say Old Jefferson Highway. Call it Old Jefferson.
Yeah, because they call it 160, they call it Bell Highway still in St. Joe's.
Yeah, it's still Bell Highway, so, yeah.
How much of that could end up being Old Jefferson
The
Highway?
whole thing.
The whole thing?
Well, minus the yellow, because that's underneath.
Oh, okay.
So you could call the blue also?
That was my suggestion, to separate them, because you would have they're not in line, and they have a break in name that you get two names. Whatever you guys choose, how you want to.
Yeah, I think the blue section, I think that would, Frank Justice is very adamant on us putting up signs, getting it out there, so everyone knows. We have the maps, we know where it is.
The blue section would be
Yeah.
Jefferson Highway?
Yeah, Old Jefferson Highway.
What about,
That's the Main Street.
that's on Main Street?
Yeah. That's all. And then on the red, is everyone good with being in, keep it with the Eagle theme?
I like
That's
that.
the Eagle Traffic Way, something of that.
We do.
You can name it however you want.
Eagle
Boulevard, Traffic Way.
Boulevard and Parkway opens it up for, would widen it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is in all those
Yeah.
traffic ways.
There is is it Kansas City statute on boulevards, or is it Missouri statute on boulevards?
No, it's a localized state. Generally boulevards, have medians, of some kind of planters in them. That's the historical name for a boulevard. We have boulevards in town. We have Quincy Boulevard. It's a city street.
What's St. Joe's Legion Parkway, where they're.
Yeah, there's a city
They're-
park, right.
Yeah.
Their parkway system was created around the time Jefferson Highway.
So
was
if
in
it's
20s.
boulevard, it's gotta be fancy.
Or Parkway. Or Parkway, we widen it and make it.
Right. Parkway
It's gotta be-
assumes it's a way to get through,
To something.
yeah, right.
Is the blue going to
Yeah.
get lighted too?
And if there's gonna be a park over there.
It's gonna get around about.
The parkway sounds better, with the park.
Very hospital.
What was that you said, Deb?
Yeah.
What did you just say, Deb?
There's a park, there's gonna be a park over there anyway. It just seems like the red section. It's so simple, just call it Eagle Parkway.
I like that.
We're gonna have an 8-acre park, 7-acre park that's getting approved. Starting
Yeah,
about
that's
pretty
going
quick.
all over there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think Eagle Parkway sounds great.
I was gonna vote for Trenda Boulevard.
We'll name that little street that goes through Maine and that other way your house.
Oh, Fairway?
For like a day.
Okay. I like it,
For when you line in the year.
I'll take what I can get.
Okay, so from what I have heard proposed is that the blue line would be renamed, or our suggestion to the alderman would be to rename the blue line Old Jefferson Highway and to rename the red line Eagle Parkway. Do I have a motion for that?
I move that we recommend to name the Section 1 Eagle Parkway and Section 3 Old Jefferson Highway, and leave the yellow section as Northeast 180th and DD out to Lincoln Way as Main Street.
I will second that.
Just further discussion, any other questions or comments? If not, roll call.
Trenda? Rand?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
I,
Mayor Boley?
Aye.
Shirley?
Aye.
6-0.
I will have a resolution for street renaming, those street names, on the next Tuesday's board agenda. It will have a delay period as well, like the other ones did. We'll get the letters out, do all that, it becomes effective once that's in. From a signage standpoint, the wayfinding, we'll have to order all new signs at every intersection, which is fine because then they'll be big enough to read and that kind of stuff. We will likely do that in the spring when we do all the new signs downtown. And that's what we're waiting for on the stuff from last year is we'll do all the signs, get them all installed with one big project instead of slotted around.
Will we need to update our stop sign speed limit ordinance for the new street names?
We will have to adjust anything associated with, that has a specifics, the stop sign stuff. We will have a better fix for that will be coming to the board.
Is there gonna be a better fix for right there at Old Anderson Highway and 180th? Where you stop there on the deal, go past Eagle Heights, Eagle Heights, got that number? Grayhawk?
Yeah, ultimately, the
Nobody ever knows, okay, are you turning or are you not turning?
That's an
Which way are you
intersection. That's an intersection improvement. It is in an area that the comprehensive plan would recommend highly that we put a roundabout in, so that pedestrians can get across. You'll note that we have a trail about 300 feet away from it, that would, the Parks Master Plan wants all of our traffic from subdivisions heading east into the existing Clay County trail system to save money long-term. And we're hoping to do a tie to get some on what Eagle Parkway, with the trail running down the west side of it as a part of the subdivision south of Wildflower. So if that happens, we'll eventually have that connection, and you will then be able to go from north of W Highway on those trails, all the way through the county park trail system, come out, go down Eagle Parkway to 180th Street, then go back into the park, go through the park, come out over on the core lane, go into Smith's Fork Park, and connect to the trail at Smith's Fork Park that will bring you right downtown. All of it in every subdivision up that on the north side, able to access it.
And then from Diamond Crest Trail, and potentially also would,
Yep, it would hopefully intersect the trade winds in Eagle Parkway.
And
That's the plan.
there is something in the works there for a roundabout or something to fix that intersection, that is what I agree.
Yeah, it does need to happen. It is planned. There are no plans designed for it. It will likely be subject to the next CIP process. There's going to be a whole bunch of that kind of stuff.
well, and we
So what are we talking, when's the next CIP process?
Later, well, not this year because we're in 18. Later in early 19 to mid 19, we should start that process.
And also, we're doing the engineering for the other roundabout, the Grayhawk, we might see if we can combine those two.
Right.
And do-
Roundabouts are fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of, it becomes a function of, you're building in sort of the water gets around and away from it. So you have stormwater issues. The geometrics of those are fairly straightforward. We have a fairly good layout at the MoDOT one, with the respite areas in the middle, those safe havens in the middle, so that you can cross a highway like 92 safely. You don't have to look one way, get to that respite area, then you look the other way, so that you're not trying to run across 25 feet of pavement, looking both ways.
So do you know what the average cost is per roundabout?
Depends on the intersection. We anticipate the one that Grayhawk has to do to be around 300.
And they would do that or?
Yeah, they construct it, city designs it, they construct
Okay.
And those are gonna be so close together, though. I mean,
it. Look at all the houses.
but.
I'm not really that much, it could be
They're about almost a half a mile between the north
Oh,
south.
you know, I'm talking about that.
Yeah, so it'll be one of the ones.
Yeah, the other two, they're a full quarter mile. There's one in between.
No, very confident. And then that was
Yeah.
and then they might do.
Similar to the Old Top Nubs downtown, they slow traffic down when you have a lot of pedestrians around subdivisions like that, that's what you want, slow things down. If you want to be on the racetrack or the state highway.
Just like we're doing now. Slow down.
Should have run in the conflict.
Okay.
Do we have any districts that can move around?
No.
Not that we're trying to get away
Yep.
from.
Yep. Yep. That was my, yeah, it already dawned on me that was
I
where.
don't think we did that.
Yeah. No events in town.
Okay. Just wanted to see if we have any other public comments that anybody would like to make. Hearing none, anything else, any new business, anything that the commission wants to bring up? Hearing none, I will say Merry Christmas again, and at this point, we are, I guess I need to roll call for, or make a motion to adjourn. All right, get out of here.
I move to adjourn.
Second,
I'll second.
any discussion?
You're good.
All in favor?
No, it's a voice vote.
Any opposed?
No.
We are adjourned.
Cupcakes.
You did.